My daughter kicked me out after selling the family company for $18 million. She yelled, "You didn't build anything, you just watched." I simply walked out the back door, but the patent was still in my name. The words still echo in my mind 3 hours later as I sit in my sister Joan's kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that's gone cold. Victoria's voice had been so sharp, so final. 43 years of my life dismissed in a single sentence. 43 years of getting up at 5 in the morning, of calloused hands and steel-toed boots, of being the only woman on construction sites when women weren't welcome. Just watched. The phrase burns like acid in my throat. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. I remember the day I first walked onto a job site in 1981. I was 25, fresh out of engineering school and pregnant with Victoria. The men stared at me like I was an alien. My husband Robert had just started Brennan Construction with his brother, and they needed every hand they could get. But when I showed up ready to work, Robert pulled me aside. "Eleanor, honey, maybe you should handle the books instead. The office work. It's not safe for someone in your condition." I wanted to argue, but Victoria was kicking in my belly, and the morning sickness was hitting me hard. So I agreed. For a while. But I couldn't stay away from the actual construction. Every evening after Robert came home covered in dust and exhaustion, I'd ask about the problems they were facing. Foundation issues on the Morrison project, drainage problems at the school expansion, structural challenges with the shopping center. Robert would shrug, "We'll figure it out tomorrow." But I couldn't sleep knowing there were solutions waiting to be found. So I started staying up late, sketching designs, working through calculations. When Robert found my notebooks filled with detailed plans for reinforced foundation systems, he laughed. "You've got quite an imagination, Elle. Maybe you should write children's books instead." That's when I stopped showing him my work. I developed the reinforced concrete technique that would become our signature in 1983. Victoria was 2 then, toddling around the office while I hunched over drafting tables during lunch breaks. The technique reduced material costs by 30% while increasing structural integrity by 40%. I tested it myself on a small addition to our garage, documenting every step. When Robert's crew started using his new technique on the Peterson warehouse, I watched from the office window as productivity skyrocketed. The job finished 2 weeks early and $8,000 under budget. Robert came home that night talking about his breakthrough. "I think I figured out something revolutionary, Elle. This could change everything for us." I nodded and served him dinner, never mentioning the patent application I'd filed the week before. In my maiden name. Eleanor Hartwell, not Eleanor Brennan. Victoria grew up watching her father get praised for innovations I'd created in secret. By the time she was 10, she'd heard dozens of stories about Dad's engineering genius at school events and company parties. I was always introduced as Robert's wife, or the one who keeps the books straight, never as the woman who designed the load-bearing systems that made our buildings stand through 3 major earthquakes. When Robert died suddenly of a heart attack in 2019, Victoria was 38 and working as the company's project manager. She'd learned construction from her father's crews, not from me. In her mind, I was the grieving widow who'd somehow inherited a business I didn't understand. "Don't worry, Mom," she'd said at the funeral. "I'll take care of everything. You don't need to worry about the technical stuff." I let her believe that. Maybe I was tired of fighting for recognition. Maybe I thought she'd eventually see my contributions. Maybe I was just too heartbroken to care. For 4 years, I watched Victoria run the company using techniques I'd developed. She expanded into commercial construction, winning contracts with my reinforced foundation systems. She hired new engineers who marveled at the innovative legacy methods Robert had apparently pioneered. The company grew from 12 employees to 43. This morning, Victoria called me into the conference room. She was wearing the navy business suit I'd bought her for her promotion to president. Her hair was pulled back in the severe bun she'd adopted after Robert died. "Mom, I have news." Her voice was steady, professional. "I've accepted an offer to sell Brennan Construction." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Sell? Victoria? This is our family business. This is everything your father and I built." She leaned back in her chair, looking exactly like Robert when he was about to explain something he thought I wouldn't understand. "Mom, let's be realistic. You've never actually built anything. You handled the books, you made coffee for the crews, you watched Dad work, but the real construction, the engineering, the innovation, that was all Dad. And now it's me." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Victoria, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." Her voice was rising, taking on the sharp edge it got when she was frustrated. "You inherited this company, but you didn't earn it. You didn't design the buildings. You didn't develop the techniques. You didn't solve the engineering problems. You just watched. The offer is for $18 million, Mom. $18 million. We'll both be set for life. You can finally retire properly. Maybe travel. Do whatever women your age do when they don't have to pretend to run construction companies. The room was spinning. 43 years of my life dismissed. Reduced to making coffee and keeping books. You didn't build anything, Victoria continued, her voice getting louder. You just watched. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. Victoria was still talking. Something about settlement timelines and transition periods, but I couldn't hear her anymore. The blood was rushing in my ears too loudly. I walked to the door, then turned back to look at my daughter one more time. She was already pulling out her phone, probably calling her lawyer. Victoria, I said quietly. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. You have no idea what you just did. I walked out through the back door, the same door I'd used for 43 years. My car keys were in my purse, along with something Victoria didn't know existed, a small envelope I'd been carrying for decades. An envelope containing documents that would change everything. Because while Victoria was right about one thing, I had been watching. But I'd been watching her use my innovations, my patents, my life's work to build what she thought was her legacy. The patent for the reinforced foundation system was still in my name. So were the patents for the load-bearing wall modifications, the drainage solutions, and the seismic-resistant joint systems, all registered under Eleanor Hartwell, all completely unknown to my daughter. Victoria had just sold a company built on my innovations she didn't own. Joan's spare bedroom smells like lavender and old photographs. I've been staring at the ceiling for 3 nights now, listening to the neighbor's dog bark at shadows while my mind races through 40 years of memories I'd buried under layers of silent endurance. Victoria hasn't called, not once. On Thursday morning, I drive past Brennan Construction on my way to the grocery store. The parking lot is buzzing with activity. Moving trucks, men in expensive suits carrying briefcases. Victoria's red BMW parked in the spot that used to be mine, the one closest to the back entrance I'd used every morning for 4 decades. I park across the street and watch through my windshield as strangers walk through the building I'd helped design. The buyers are already taking measurements, probably planning to gut the place and start fresh. They have no idea they're measuring spaces created using techniques I developed in secret. My phone buzzes. A text from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Eleanor, dear, there are men at your house with boxes. Should I be concerned? I close my eyes and lean my head against the steering wheel. Victoria is clearing out the house Robert and I bought in 1984, where I raised her, where I spent countless nights at the kitchen table developing the innovations that built our company's reputation. I text back, It's fine, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you for letting me know. But it's not fine. Nothing about this is fine. When I finally drive to the house, Victoria's car is in the driveway next to a large moving truck. Through the living room window, I can see her directing 2 men as they carry out the antique desk where I used to work on my designs. The desk Robert bought me for our 10th anniversary, where I'd calculated load distributions while Victoria did her homework at the kitchen table. I sit in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, and watch my life being packed into boxes. Victoria emerges from the front door carrying a framed photograph. Even from this distance, I recognize it. Our family picture from 1995, taken at the construction site of the first shopping mall built entirely with my reinforced foundation system. In the photo, Robert has his arm around Victoria, who's grinning and wearing a hard hat too big for her 12-year-old head. I'm standing slightly apart, as always, holding a clipboard and smiling politely at the camera. She looks directly at my car. For a moment, our eyes meet across the driveway. Her expression doesn't change. She simply turns and hands the photograph to one of the movers, then disappears back into the house. That evening, Joan finds me sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold and a pile of yellowed documents spread in front of me. What are all these papers, Eleanor? I look up at my younger sister, who's been letting me camp in her guest room without asking questions. Joan never worked construction. She became a teacher, married a dentist, had 2 kids who call her every Sunday. She lived the life people expected women of our generation to live. Patent applications, I say quietly. 43 years of patent applications. Joan sits down across from me and picks up one of the documents. Her eyes widen as she reads. Eleanor Frances Hartwell, Reinforced Concrete Foundation System, filed March 15, 1983. She looks up at me. You filed this under your maiden name? I nod. I filed all of them under my maiden name, 15 patents in total. Every major innovation Brennan Construction has used for the past 4 decades. Joan's voice is barely a whisper. Does Victoria know? Victoria doesn't know I exist, I say bitterly. Why would she know about my patents? The next morning, I wake up to find 3 missed calls from Bill Harrison, our company's longtime attorney. He's been handling Brennan Construction's legal affairs since 1987, when Robert's brother decided to sell his share and move to Florida. I call him back while Joan is at her morning yoga class. Eleanor, thank God. Bill's voice is strained. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. We have a problem. My heart pounds. What kind of problem? The buyers are conducting their due diligence review. They've requested documentation for all the proprietary construction techniques the company uses: patents, licensing agreements, intellectual property transfers. I close my eyes. And, Eleanor, I can't find any patents registered to Brennan Construction. Not one. The buyers are asking about the reinforced foundation system, the load-bearing modifications, the drainage solutions, all the techniques that make your building special. But according to my records, the company doesn't own the rights to any of them. I take a deep breath. That's because the company never owned them, Bill. Silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean? I mean, I own them. All of them. Registered under Eleanor Hartwell, not Eleanor Brennan. I never transferred the patents to the company. Bill's sharp intake of breath tells me he's beginning to understand the magnitude of the situation. Eleanor, do you realize what this means? If Brennan Construction doesn't own these patents, if they've been using proprietary techniques without proper licensing, it means Victoria just sold a company that doesn't legally own its most valuable assets. I finish for him. Jesus Christ, Eleanor, why didn't you ever tell anyone about this? I think about all the times Robert dismissed my ideas, all the company parties where I was introduced as the bookkeeper, all the years Victoria grew up believing her father was the engineering genius behind our success. Because nobody ever asked, I say simply. That afternoon, my phone starts ringing. Bill Harrison calling back with more questions. The buyer's attorney requesting immediate clarification. Victoria calling for the first time since she kicked me out. Her name flashing on my screen like a warning signal. I let it go to voicemail. 2 hours later, Joan comes home to find me sitting on her back porch, still staring at my silent phone. Eleanor, you have 17 missed calls. I nod. I know. Aren't you going to call them back? I look at my sister. This woman who's never had to fight for recognition, never had to prove her worth to people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. Not yet, I say. Let them realize what they've done first. Joan sits down next to me. What happens now? I think about Victoria packing up my life, carrying away that family photograph where I stood apart from my own husband and daughter. I think about 43 years of innovations credited to dead men and dismissive children. Now they learn that some things can't be taken. I say quietly, some things have to be earned. My phone buzzes with another call from Victoria. This time the ringtone sounds different, desperate instead of demanding. I turn the phone face down and watch the sunset over Joan's garden, feeling something I haven't felt in decades settling in my chest. For the first time in my life, I hold all the cards. And Victoria is about to discover just how expensive her assumptions really are. The pounding on Joan's front door starts at 7:30 in the morning, sharp and insistent. I'm sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee and the morning paper when I hear Victoria's voice through the thin walls. I know she's in there, Joan. I need to talk to my mother. Now. Joan's voice is calm but firm. She doesn't want to see you, Victoria. I don't care what she wants. This is business. Business. The word sits heavy in my chest. After 43 years, I'm finally business to my daughter. I take another sip of coffee and turn the page of the newspaper, even though I'm not reading a single word. The financial section blurs together as Victoria's voice gets louder, more desperate. Joan, please. The buyers are threatening to pull out of the deal. There's some kind of legal issue with the patents. I need Mom to explain what's happening. I set down my cup and walk to the living room window. Victoria is standing on Joan's front porch in yesterday's clothes, her hair unwashed, her usually perfect makeup smeared. She looks like she hasn't slept. Good. Joan appears in the doorway behind me. What do you want me to tell her? I watch my daughter pace back and forth on the porch, her phone pressed to her ear. She's talking rapidly to someone, probably Bill Harrison or the buyer's attorney. Her free hand keeps running through her tangled hair. Tell her I'm not home, I say. But Joan is already opening the front door. Victoria, your mother says she's not home. Victoria pushes past Joan and storms into the living room. When she sees me standing by the window, her face crumples with relief and fury. Mom, what the hell is going on? Bill Harrison says you own patents that belong to the company. The buyers are saying we committed fraud. They want their deposit back. I turn to face my daughter slowly. She looks smaller somehow. less sure of herself than she did 3 days ago when she was throwing me out of my own life. I don't own patents that belong to the company, Victoria, I say calmly. I own patents that the company has been using without permission. Her mouth falls open. What are you talking about? I walk to Joan's coffee table and pick up the manila envelope I've been carrying for decades. The envelope Victoria never knew existed. I pull out a thick stack of documents and set them down carefully. 15 patents, Victoria, all filed under Eleanor Hartwell between 1983 and 2018. The reinforced foundation system that made us famous. The load-bearing modifications that let us build taller than our competitors. The drainage solutions that prevented flood damage. The seismic-resistant joints that kept our buildings standing during the Northridge earthquake. Victoria stares at the papers like they're written in a foreign language. That's impossible. Dad developed those techniques. Your father couldn't calculate a tip at a restaurant without asking for help, I say quietly. He was a good man and a hard worker, but he wasn't an engineer. I was. Victoria's voice rises to a near shout. You're lying. Dad went to engineering school. He had the degree. Your father went to construction management school for 2 years before he dropped out to start the company. I went to Cal Poly for 4 years and graduated summa cum laude with a degree in structural engineering. But nobody ever asked about my education because I was just the wife who handled the books. I pick up the first patent application and hold it out to her. Read it, Victoria. Read the name on the application. Read the detailed specifications. Read the mathematical calculations. Then tell me your father wrote this. Victoria takes the document with shaking hands. Her eyes scan the pages, and I watch her face change as she begins to understand. The technical language, the complex equations, the precise engineering terminology that Robert never used, never understood. Why? Her voice is barely a whisper. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? I tried to tell your father. He laughed at me. He said I had quite an imagination and maybe I should write children's books instead. Victoria sinks into Joan's armchair, still holding the patent application. But the company, we've been using these techniques for 40 years. Everyone knows they're ours. They're mine. I correct her. They were always mine. I just let the company use them because I thought it was a family business. I thought I was contributing to something we were building together. The buyers, Victoria says suddenly, her face going pale. They're paying $18 million for a company that doesn't own its most valuable assets. That's correct. Victoria looks up at me, and for the first time since she was a little girl, I see fear in her eyes. Real fear. Mom, they'll sue us. They'll want the money back. They'll destroy us. They'll destroy you, I say calmly. I was never part of the sale, remember? I just watched. Victoria stands up abruptly, the patent papers scattering to the floor. You have to help me. You have to transfer the patents to the company. You have to fix this. I don't have to do anything, Victoria. I'm your daughter. Are you? I ask quietly. Because 3 days ago, you told me I didn't build anything. You told me I just watched while real people did real work. You told me I didn't deserve to be part of the family business because I never contributed anything. Victoria's face crumples. For a moment, she looks like the scared little girl who used to run to me when she had nightmares. I didn't know, she whispers. I didn't know you were the one who created everything. You didn't know because you never asked. In 43 years, Victoria, you never once asked me what I did besides make coffee and keep books. You never wondered how a construction management dropout managed to revolutionize foundation engineering. You never questioned why our techniques were so much better than our competitors. I bend down and gather the scattered patent papers, stacking them neatly. You assumed your father was the genius because he was the man. You assumed I was just along for the ride because I was the woman. And when he died, you assumed the genius passed to you because you were his child. Victoria is crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. What do you want me to do? I look at my daughter, this woman I raised who grew up to treat me like I was invisible. This woman who inherited everything I built and convinced herself she deserved it. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, I say quietly. I want you to realize that respect isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. My phone buzzes with a text message. I glance at the screen and see a name I haven't heard from in years. Marcus Webb, senior partner at Webb & Associates, the most prestigious engineering firm in the state. The message is brief. Eleanor, heard about your situation. Very interested in discussing licensing opportunities for your patents. Call me. I show the message to Victoria, whose face goes even paler. Other people know? She asks. Word travels fast in the engineering community, I say. Especially when someone discovers that the legendary Brennan Construction techniques weren't developed by a Brennan at all. Victoria looks at me with something I've never seen in her eyes before. Respect mixed with terror. What happens now? I slip the phone back into my pocket and head toward the door. Now you learn what it feels like to need something from someone who doesn't owe you anything, I say. I'll be in touch when I decide what I want to do with my patents. As I leave Joan's house, I can hear Victoria calling after me, her voice breaking. But for the first time in 43 years, I keep walking. Marcus Webb's office overlooks downtown from the 40th floor, all glass and steel and quiet power. I haven't been in a room like this since Robert died. Haven't sat across from someone who looked at me like I might have something valuable to offer. Eleanor Hartwell, Marcus says, extending his hand. I've been following your work for 30 years without knowing it was your work. He's younger than I expected, maybe 55, with silver at his temples and the kind of confidence that comes from building skyscrapers. When I called him back yesterday, he cleared his afternoon schedule immediately. Most people have, I say, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. Marcus opens a thick folder and pulls out what I recognize as blueprints. My blueprints, though they're labeled with Robert's name and Brennan Construction's logo. The Morrison Project, 1984, first commercial use of your reinforced foundation system. He flips to another page. The Riverside Shopping Center, 1987, your load-bearing modification that allowed for the 60-foot spans without interior supports. Another page. The Metro Hospital expansion, 1995. Your seismic-resistant joints that kept the building operational after the Northridge earthquake. I watch him turn through 40 years of my innovations, all credited to other people, and feel something shifting inside my chest. Not anger anymore. Something cleaner. How long have you known? I ask. Marcus leans back in his chair. I suspected something was off about 10 years ago. I kept seeing these brilliant solutions coming out of Brennan Construction, but every time I met with Robert at industry conferences, he couldn't explain the technical details. He'd get vague, change the subject, or defer to his team, but you never investigated. I had no reason to, until 3 days ago when Bill Harrison called me in a panic, asking about patent ownership and intellectual property transfers. When he mentioned your name was on the original patents, Marcus smiles. Everything clicked into place. My phone has been buzzing constantly for 2 days. Victoria calling every hour. Bill Harrison leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. The buyer's attorney threatening legal action. I've ignored them all. What exactly are you proposing, Marcus? He pulls out a contract from his desk drawer. Webb and Associates would like to license your patents for our commercial projects. We're particularly interested in the seismic-resistant technology for our California developments. I scan the numbers on the contract, and my breath catches. The licensing fee alone is more than Victoria's $18 million sale. This is just the beginning, Marcus continues. Your techniques could revolutionize earthquake-safe construction across the Pacific Rim. We're talking about projects in Japan, Chile, New Zealand, markets that Brennan Construction never even considered. And Victoria? Marcus's expression hardens slightly. What about her? She's still using my patents without authorization. Her buyers are threatening to pull out because the company doesn't own the intellectual property they thought they were purchasing. That's her problem to solve, Marcus says bluntly, unless you choose to make it your problem. I think about Victoria crying in Joan's living room, finally understanding that her entire life has been built on work she didn't do, innovations she didn't create, respect she didn't earn. I'd like to propose something, I say slowly. Marcus raises an eyebrow. I license my patents to you for international use, but for domestic projects, I maintain exclusive control. Meaning? Meaning if Brennan Construction wants to continue using my techniques, they negotiate with me directly. Marcus grins. You want to make your daughter come to you for permission to use your own innovations? I want my daughter to understand that some things can't be taken. They have to be given. That evening, I'm having dinner with Joan when Victoria shows up at the door again. This time, she doesn't pound or demand entry. She knocks quietly and waits. Joan looks at me questioningly. I nod. Victoria enters the dining room like she's walking into church, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes red from crying. Mom, I need to talk to you. Sit down, I say, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Victoria sits carefully, as if the chair might break under her weight. The buyers pulled out. They want their deposit back plus damages for misrepresentation. I cut another piece of Joan's pot roast and chew it slowly. How much? $22 million. Victoria's voice breaks. Mom, I don't have $22 million. The company doesn't have it. We'll lose everything. You'll lose everything, I correct her. I was never part of your sale, remember? Victoria looks down at her hands. I know what I said. I know how I treated you. I was wrong. You were more than wrong, Victoria. You were cruel. She nods, tears falling onto Joan's tablecloth. I'm sorry. Are you sorry because you hurt me, or because you need something from me? Victoria is quiet for a long moment. Both, she says finally. I'm sorry because I spent my whole life believing lies about you. I'm sorry because I treated you like you were worthless when you created everything I was proud of. And I'm sorry because now I need you to save me from my own stupidity. It's the most honest thing she's said to me in years. The buyers aren't the only problem, I say quietly. Marcus Webb wants to license my patents for his international projects. Other firms are calling. Once word gets out that Eleanor Hartwell is the real innovator behind the Brennan Construction techniques, we'll have competition for the first time in 40 years. Victoria finishes. You'll have competition. I'll have options. Victoria looks up at me, and I see something I haven't seen since she was a child. Vulnerability. What do I have to do? I set down my fork and lean back in my chair. First, you apologize to every person you fired after taking over the company. You offer them their jobs back with raises. Victoria nods. Second, you put my name on every building we've constructed using my techniques. Eleanor Hartwell, Chief Engineer. Not consultant, not advisor. Chief Engineer. Done. Third, we restructure the company. I become a 51% owner and retain all rights to my patents. You work for me now, not the other way around. Victoria's face goes pale, but she nods. And fourth, I say, my voice getting quieter, you never again dismiss someone's contributions because of their gender, their age, or your assumptions about their capabilities. The next time you think someone just watched, you ask them what they actually did. Victoria is crying again, but she's nodding. Can you live with those terms? Do I have a choice? I think about all the years I spent in silence, all the innovations I created without recognition, all the times I let people assume I was just along for the ride. There's always a choice, Victoria. I chose to stay silent for 43 years. You chose to believe I was invisible. Now we both get to choose what happens next. Victoria looks at me across Joan's dining room table, and for the first time in decades, she really sees me. I choose to learn from the best engineer I've ever met, she says quietly, even if it took me 40 years to realize she was my mother. I reach across the table and squeeze her hand. It's calloused now, roughened by years of construction work, but it's still the same hand that used to reach for mine when she was scared. Then let's rebuild, I say. The right way this time. The conference room at Brennan Construction looks different when you're sitting at the head of the table instead of in the corner. I've called this meeting for 9 o'clock sharp, and everyone is here. Victoria, Bill Harrison, the 3 senior project managers Victoria didn't fire, and Marcus Webb, who flew in from San Francisco to witness what he calls the changing of the guard. Victoria sits to my right, wearing a navy blazer that's wrinkled from stress and sleepless nights. She's lost weight in the past 2 weeks, and there are dark circles under her eyes that makeup can't hide. She keeps glancing at me like she's still not sure this is real, like I might disappear and leave her to face the consequences alone. I won't. But she's going to earn every ounce of help I give her. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin, my voice steady in the room where I was dismissed 2 weeks ago. I've asked you here to discuss the future of Brennan Construction and to clarify some misconceptions about the company's intellectual property. Bill Harrison shifts uncomfortably in his seat. He's been my attorney for 30 years. But he looks at me now like he's seeing me for the first time. Eleanor, he starts, about the patents. I hold up my hand to stop him. Bill, you're not in trouble. You handled the legal work exactly as I instructed. The problem was never your documentation. The problem was assumptions. I stand and walk to the whiteboard where Victoria used to draw project timelines. Instead, I write a list. 15 patent numbers, filing dates, and brief descriptions. The innovations that built this company's reputation. For 43 years, Brennan Construction has operated under the assumption that these techniques belong to the company. That assumption was incorrect. Tom Bradley, our senior project manager, speaks up. Mrs. Brennan, I don't understand. Your husband always said... My husband, I interrupt gently, was a good man and a capable manager. But he wasn't an engineer. I was. I am. I turn to face the room. I developed every technique on this list. I filed every patent application. I registered them under my maiden name, Eleanor Hartwell, to protect my intellectual property in case the company ever faced financial difficulties. Marcus Webb nods approvingly. It was smart business practice. It was survival, I correct him. In 1983, women in engineering weren't taken seriously. I knew that if I registered the patents under Brennan Construction, they would be attributed to Robert regardless of who actually created them. Victoria finally speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. So everything we built... Everything you built was based on my innovations, I say, meeting her eyes. But you built it, Victoria. You managed the crews, secured the contracts, grew the business. I created the foundation. You constructed everything else. Relief flickers across her face before reality sets in again. But the buyers, Tom says. What about the sale? The sale is void, Bill Harrison explains. The buyers were purchasing a company they believed owned proprietary construction techniques. When they discovered the patents belonged to Eleanor personally, they terminated the agreement and demanded restitution. How much? Asks Sarah Chen, our youngest project manager. Victoria closes her eyes. $22 million. The room falls silent. However, I continue, I've been in negotiations with several engineering firms who are very interested in licensing my patents. Webb & Associates has already signed an agreement for international projects. Marcus slides a contract across the table. The licensing fees will more than cover the restitution costs and provide ongoing revenue for the company. Under one condition, I add, I retain majority ownership of Brennan Construction and final approval over all projects using my techniques. Tom looks confused. But Victoria is the president. Victoria will continue as president, I say firmly. But she'll report to me. I'm the new CEO and majority owner. Victoria nods. It's fair, she says quietly. It's more than fair. There are other changes, I continue. First, we're rehiring everyone Victoria let go when she took over, with raises and apologies. Victoria winces but nods. Second, we're implementing new policies about recognition and credit. Every innovation, every improvement, every solution will be properly attributed to the person who created it, regardless of their position or seniority. Sarah Chen straightens in her chair. Does that include the drainage modification I suggested for the Henderson Project? Especially that, I say. Your suggestion saved us 3 weeks and $40,000. That deserves recognition and compensation. Sarah looks shocked. In 2 years of working here, no one has ever acknowledged her contributions. Third, I continue, we're restructuring as Hartwell Brennan Construction. My innovations, Victoria's execution, equal partnership moving forward. Victoria's voice is thick with emotion. Mom, you don't have to. I want to, I say firmly. But understand, Victoria, this isn't charity. This is business. You'll earn your 50% stake by proving you can run this company with integrity and respect for everyone who contributes to its success. Marcus Webb stands. Eleanor, it's been a pleasure working with someone who understands both engineering and business. I look forward to our continued partnership. After he leaves, the room empties except for Victoria and me. She sits staring at the conference table where she dismissed me 2 weeks ago. I ruined everything, she says finally. No, I reply, sitting down beside her. You made mistakes. There's a difference. How can you forgive me? After everything I said, everything I did? I think about the past 2 weeks, about the phone calls I ignored, the voicemails I deleted, the moment I realized I held all the power. For 43 years, I had been invisible. For 2 weeks, I made Victoria feel the same way. Because you're my daughter, I say simply, and because everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. Victoria looks at me with tears in her eyes. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you giving me half the company. You're right. I agree. You don't deserve it. You'll have to earn it. How? I pull out a thick folder I've been carrying. These are my notebooks from the past 40 years. Every innovation, every calculation, every solution I developed in secret. I want you to study them. I want you to understand not just how to use these techniques, but how to create new ones. Victoria opens the first notebook and sees pages of my handwriting, detailed drawings, complex calculations. You want to teach me? I want to teach you what I should have taught you from the beginning. That innovation comes from curiosity, not authority. That the best solutions often come from the people actually doing the work. That being in charge means listening to everyone, not just the loudest voices. Victoria turns through the pages, her eyes widening as she begins to understand the depth of work I'd done in silence. Why did you never show me these before? Because you never asked, I say. You assumed you already knew everything you needed to know. Victoria closes the notebook and looks at me. Will you teach me now? Only if you promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll never again assume someone has nothing to contribute just because they're not in charge. Promise me you'll ask questions before you make judgments. Promise me you'll remember that the person making coffee might be the same person who could solve your biggest problem. Victoria nods, tears streaming down her face. I promise. I reach across and squeeze her hand. Then let's get to work. We have a company to rebuild. As we sit together in the conference room, surrounded by 40 years of my hidden innovations, I realize this is what I've been waiting for my entire career. Not recognition, not credit, not revenge. A chance to pass on what I've learned to someone who will finally appreciate its value. Victoria opens the first notebook again and points to a diagram. Can you explain how this foundation system distributes lateral stress? I smile and pull my chair closer to hers. From the beginning, I say. Let me show you from the very beginning. 6 months later, I'm standing in front of the newly installed sign outside our headquarters. Hartwell Brennan Construction, Engineering Excellence since 1981. The brass plaque below it reads, Eleanor Hartwell, Chief Engineer and CEO, Victoria Brennan, President and COO. It's taken me 68 years to see my name on a building, but it was worth the wait. Victoria walks up beside me, wearing the steel-toed boots I bought her for Christmas, and carrying the battered hard hat that used to be mine. She's lost the severe business suits and tight buttons. Her hair falls loosely around her shoulders, and her hands are permanently stained with construction dust. She looks more like herself than she has in years. The Henderson Project broke ground this morning, she says, falling into step beside me as we walk toward the building. Sarah's drainage system is working perfectly. The city engineering department wants to meet with her next week about implementing it citywide. Good, I say. She earned that recognition. The past 6 months have been the most challenging and rewarding of my career. Victoria has thrown herself into learning with the intensity of someone making up for lost time. She carries my notebooks everywhere, asks questions that keep me up at night thinking of better answers, and has started developing modifications to my techniques that I never would have considered. Last month, she presented her first original innovation to the team, a foundation system that combines my reinforced concrete technique with a new polymer injection method that increases earthquake resistance by 20%. When she credited me as her inspiration and teacher, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Professional pride in my daughter. Mom, Victoria says as we enter the building, there's something I need to tell you. We walk past the reception area where Tom Bradley is training 2 new engineers. Both women Victoria hired specifically because their applications showed innovative thinking rather than just impressive credentials. The walls are covered with framed photographs of our projects, each one clearly labeled with the names of everyone who contributed to its success. What is it? I ask as we reach my office. Victoria sits down across from my desk, in the chair that used to be hers when this was her company, and I was the invisible bookkeeper. The irony isn't lost on either of us. I've been offered a job, she says quietly. My heart sinks. Where? Webb & Associates. Marcus wants me to head their new seismic engineering division. It's based in Los Angeles, working on earthquake-resistant high-rises across the Pacific Rim. I lean back in my chair, trying to process this. For 6 months, we've been rebuilding our relationship along with our company. Victoria has become not just a competent engineer, but a thoughtful leader who listens to her team and credits their contributions. The idea of losing her now feels like another kind of betrayal. It's an incredible opportunity, I say carefully. Marcus is offering you what you've earned. He's offering me what you taught me, Victoria corrects. Everything I know about innovation, about leadership, about respecting the people who do the actual work, I learned from watching you these past 6 months. So you're leaving? Victoria shakes her head. I'm asking what you think I should do. For 43 years, Victoria never asked my opinion about anything related to business or engineering. Now she's asking me to help her decide whether to leave the company we've rebuilt together. What do you want to do? I ask. Victoria looks around my office, at the photographs of projects we've completed together, at the whiteboard covered with calculations for our next innovation, at the shelf holding the awards we've won for engineering excellence. I want to stay, she says, but I also want to make sure I'm staying for the right reasons. What do you mean? I mean, I don't want to stay just because I feel guilty about how I treated you. I don't want to stay because I think I owe you something. I want to stay because this is where I can do my best work, where I can keep learning from the best engineer I've ever met. Tears prick my eyes. And is it? Victoria nods. Mom, in 6 months working with you, I've learned more about engineering and leadership than I did in 20 years of running this company alone. You don't just teach techniques, you teach people how to think, how to solve problems, how to see possibilities others miss. She pauses, looking down at her hands. But more than that, you've taught me how to be someone worth following, someone who builds up instead of tearing down, someone who asks questions instead of making assumptions. So what did you tell Marcus? Victoria smiles. I told him I was honored by the offer, but I already work for the best engineering firm in the country. I told him if he wants to learn about real innovation, he should come study under Eleanor Hartwell. I laughed despite the tears in my eyes. And what did he say? He said he's been thinking the same thing. He wants to send some of his senior engineers here for training. He called it the Hartwell Method. The Hartwell Method. For 68 years, I've been Eleanor Hartwell, the invisible woman whose innovations were credited to other people. Now I'm Eleanor Hartwell, the mentor whose methods are being studied by engineers across the country. There's something else, Victoria says, pulling an envelope from her jacket pocket. This came in today's mail. I open the envelope and find a letter from the American Society of Civil Engineers. The letterhead is official, formal, intimidating. Dear Ms. Hartwell, I read aloud. It is our honor to inform you that you have been selected to receive this year's Distinguished Achievement Award for your groundbreaking contributions to seismic-resistant construction techniques. Your innovations have protected countless lives and property across earthquake-prone regions, and your recent work in training the next generation of engineers exemplifies the highest ideals of our profession. I look up at Victoria, who is grinning. They want you to give the keynote speech at the national conference, she says. 5,000 engineers from around the world, all there to hear Eleanor Hartwell talk about innovation and leadership. For a moment, I can't speak. 43 years of silence, and now they want me to address the entire engineering community. Will you accept? Victoria asks. I think about the girl who walked onto construction sites in 1981, ignored and dismissed by men who couldn't see past her gender. I think about the woman who spent decades developing innovations in secret, watching other people take credit for her life's work. I think about the mother who was told by her own daughter that she didn't build anything. Yes, I say, but only if you'll introduce me. Victoria's eyes fill with tears. Mom, I would be honored. That evening, Victoria and I drive to the Henderson Project site to check on the progress. Sarah Chen's drainage system is working flawlessly, preventing the flooding that plagued the area for decades. The foundation, built with techniques I developed and Victoria perfected, will support affordable housing for 200 families. We stand side by side in the golden light of sunset, watching the crew finish their shift. These are good people, skilled workers who take pride in building things that matter. For the first time in my career, they all know my name and my contributions. Mom, Victoria says quietly, I need to apologize for something else. What's that? For all the years I wasted not learning from you, for all the innovations you could have taught me, all the problems we could have solved together if I hadn't been so arrogant and blind. I put my arm around my daughter's shoulders. We can't change the past, Victoria, but we can build a better future. Together? Together. As we walk back to our cars, Victoria pulls out her phone and shows me a message from one of her former classmates. Heard you're working with the Eleanor Hartwell now. Lucky you getting to learn from a legend. Victoria grins. Want to know what I wrote back? What? I said, lucky me, getting to be her daughter. 3 weeks later, I stand at the podium in front of 5,000 engineers, looking out at an audience that includes Marcus Webb, Sarah Chen, Tom Bradley, and in the front row, Victoria. My speech is about innovation, about the importance of listening to all voices, about the danger of assumptions, but mostly, it's about the fact that the most important discoveries often come from people who've been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored. For 43 years, I conclude, I worked in the shadows, watching other people take credit for my innovations. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the buildings stood strong and people were safe. But it did matter, not because I needed recognition, but because silence allows assumptions to flourish. It allows talent to be wasted and voices to be dismissed. I pause, looking directly at Victoria. The greatest innovation of my career wasn't a foundation system or a seismic joint. It was learning that it's never too late to step into the light, to claim your worth, to teach what you've learned. And sometimes the most important thing you can build isn't a building at all. It's a bridge to the next generation. The standing ovation lasts 5 minutes. But the moment that matters most is when Victoria meets me backstage, tears streaming down her face, and says, Mom, I'm so proud to be your daughter. 6 months ago, Victoria told me I didn't build anything. Today, I know better. I built a legacy, a company, and most importantly, a relationship with my daughter based on mutual respect and shared purpose. I built a future where my innovations will live on through the people I've taught, the techniques I've shared, and the example I've set that it's never too late to claim what's rightfully yours. I built a life worth living, finally and completely my own,